Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're tackling effective leadership, especially in the world of education. You guys wanted to know more about this, so we hit the books, right?
We did. We dove deep into a fascinating book by Charles A. Bonnici called Creating a Successful Leadership Style.
Oh, yeah, Bonici. Now, this guy, he knows his stuff.
He does. 40 years of experience in the field.
Wow.
Yeah, he's been a teacher, a principal,
Oh, wow.
even a college adjunct. So
He's seen it all.
he's seen it all. And the best part is his book is packed with real-world examples.
Oh, perfect.
Advice straight from the trenches.
Yeah,
No ivory tower theories here.
exactly. This is the nitty-gritty of what it takes to lead a school. And we're going to be diving into some of the most intriguing stories from his book.
We are?
How to handle those tough situations, how to empower your team, and even those unexpected challenges, right? Textbook returns, fire drills, all through the lens of leadership.
It's amazing how those everyday situations can become real tests of leadership.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so Bonnici, he lays out a whole bunch of leadership principles in his book. But the first one, and I think this is so important, is always be a role model. Now, this sounds pretty basic, right?
It does.
But the way he brings this principle to life through these stories is incredible. So he talks about this principal, Mr. Thielen, who took over this completely chaotic English department.
Inner city high school, no curriculum to speak of.
Oh my gosh.
Teachers were using the same, dusty old books year after year. No standardized lesson plans. Can you imagine walking into that?
What a nightmare.
Total chaos. But here's what's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Instead of just giving up, Mr. Thielen jumped right in.
Really?
Yeah, he created standardized lesson plans himself, worked with the teachers, they developed a solid curriculum, and get this, he even started picking up trash in the hallways
Oh, come.
to set an example.
I love it.
Isn't that amazing?
Okay, so I'm picturing him like trash picker in hand, leading by example. But did it actually work? I mean, come on.
You would think not, right?
Picking up trash, that's not exactly a leadership seminar.
But that's the amazing thing. Bonici says these small actions, they had this ripple effect, throughout the school culture.
Oh, wow.
Teachers saw that their principal wasn't just hiding away in his office. He was invested.
He cared.
He cared about every detail, even the messy ones.
So it's about showing your team that you're right there in the trenches with them,
Yep.
right? You're not above it all.
Exactly. You're not too good for the dirty work.
And that's powerful. But this whole leading by example thing, it goes way beyond picking up trash,
Oh,
right? Bonnici talks about how Mr. Thielen handled this really tricky situation when the NYC chancellor introduced that new graduation policy.
Oh, right. The one where students couldn't walk at graduation unless they met all the requirements.
Yeah, exactly. Huge change. And so many parents were upset, on graduation day.
Big potential for chaos.
Oh, yeah. Most principals, I'm guessing they were freaking out, but not Mr. Thielen.
Nope, not at all.
This guy, he was so proactive.
He was.
He met with every single senior, explained the policy in detail. And get this, he had students and their parents sign verification slips like, hey, I understand the new rules.
So smart.
That's so smart.
Talk about anticipating the backlash and building a defense.
He was ready. So when those inevitable angry parents came knocking, he had his proof, like documentation,
Oh, yeah.
saying, look, I did everything I could to inform everybody, effectively shifting the responsibility right back onto those students who didn't meet the requirements.
And think about it. By taking those extra steps, he avoided a major PR nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
And he protected himself from the blame.
He did. He was so smart.
So smart.
So it's really about thinking ahead, right? Anticipating those potential problems.
Always stay one step ahead.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
It's not just about putting out those fires, it's about preventing them in the first place. Okay, on to Bonici's next principle, which is don't exacerbate, diffuse.
Sounds pretty medical, right?
It does. It does.
He actually makes this brilliant comparison to the do no harm oath that doctors take.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, just like a doctor's priority is to avoid making their patient worse, a school leader's goal is to avoid escalating a situation.
Right. So it's less shouting matches, more like strategic thinking. But how do you actually do that? I mean, schools are like pressure cookers.
They are. But Bonici gives this great example of Miss Valletta, a principal dealing with students misusing the staff elevators.
Ooh, a classic.
A classic high school headache.
Every high school.
But instead of yelling and punishing, she came up with this really clever step-by-step procedure for staff to follow.
Ooh, a procedure.
A procedure.
And tell me more.
So things like politely asking for elevator passes, holding the elevator door until the student complied, and even just letting the student win that round, and then following up with the deans later.
Oh, I see.
The key was to avoid that confrontation.
Yeah.
De-escalate the situation.
It's almost counterintuitive, right? We think of a strong leader as being assertive and, taking charge. But here, she's showing that sometimes the best way to lead is to not engage in that power struggle.
Especially with teenagers.
Oh, especially with teenagers.
Yeah.
They're just going to push back even harder.
They are. They're testing those boundaries.
It's so true.
It's a subtle but incredibly effective approach. And, think about how this applies to our own lives, right? How often do we escalate situations unnecessarily just by reacting emotionally? What if we took a page from Mrs. Valletta's book and focused on de-escalating instead?
That is so insightful. I'm taking notes.
Write that down.
Bonnici also talks about how Mrs. Valletta handled angry parents. And let's be real, that is every school leader's worst nightmare.
Oh, it is.
I mean, how do you stay calm and collected when somebody is just yelling at you?
Yeah, how do you do that? So here's where Miss Valletta really shines, right?
Cool.
Bonici says she always started by actively listening to the parents' concerns, letting them vent.
Just let them get it out.
And that initial validation, you can often just diffuse the anger right away.
Oh, interesting.
And then she would hit them with this killer question.
Okay, what's the question?
She'd say, "What do you want me to do to solve this problem?"
Oh, wow. So instead of getting defensive or arguing, she's putting the ball back in their court.
Exactly. It's brilliant.
That's genius.
It forces the parent to shift from anger to problem solving. And usually they would back down and just say something like, "Just do what you think is fair."
Oh, that's amazing. It's like a Jedi mind trick.
It is. It totally is.
Okay.
That's going into my toolkit for sure.
Put that one in the back pocket.
No, it's not just students and parents, right?
Right.
Bonici doesn't shy away from some of the tougher topics like how to handle those tricky situations with security staff who, let's be honest, they can sometimes make things worse instead of better.
Yeah, he calls this Dean's syndrome.
Dean syndrome. Oh, interesting. Okay, so tell me more about that. So he points out that security staff, just by the nature of their job, they're focused on the most disruptive students.
Right. They're dealing with the most difficult kids.
The toughest kids.
Yeah.
And this can sometimes lead them to, misinterpret situations or come on too strong with kids who maybe just need a little guidance.
Right. It's not that they're bad people. They just have a different lens.
A different perspective, absolutely.
They're coming from a different angle.
Exactly. And Bonici gives some great advice on how to navigate these situations with parents.
Yeah, because that's going to be tricky.
It is. Acknowledge that mistakes happen, but also emphasize that the school's top priority is always safety.
Right. It's finding that balance.
It is.
Making sure students are safe, but also treating everyone with respect and understanding. These first two principles from Bonici, wow, they've already given me so much to think about.
I know, me too.
Bonici's just getting started. Right. What's next?
It's getting warmed up. His next principle is speak little, listen a lot. Something I think we could probably all benefit from. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I am definitely guilty of talking more than I listen sometimes. Speak little, listen a lot. Ooh, that one hits close to home.
Right.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah.
Right.
We all are. It's human nature to want to talk. But Bonici really makes a case for listening as a superpower, especially for school leaders.
Especially for school leaders, yeah. I mean, everybody wants to feel heard, but teachers, they're carrying so much.
Yeah.
So much on their shoulders, so actively listening to those concerns, even the little ones.
Even the little things, yeah.
That builds trust, right?
Absolutely. It shows respect. And it gives this great example of Miss Valletta again.
Okay.
This time, she's dealing with, endless complaints about the school's malfunctioning elevators.
Oh, I bet she got an earful about that.
Oh, yeah.
So frustrating.
Frustrating for everybody. But she didn't just brush them off.
No, she listened.
She listened patiently. She validated their frustrations, even though she didn't have an immediate solution.
Because sometimes it's not about fixing it right away. It's about acknowledging how it's impacting people.
It's acknowledging the impact, for sure. Sometimes that's all people need,
Yeah. So sometimes just listening and acknowledging can be more effective than jumping in with a solution.
Way more effective.
Counterintuitive, right?
It is. And Bonici argues that just listening can be a huge morale booster.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, people feel respected, they feel understood, even if the problem's still there. So, I mean, how can we apply that in our own lives, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Sometimes just listening to someone, without interrupting or offering unsolicited advice, it can make a huge difference.
Huge difference. Okay, so
Yeah.
this is making me rethink like my whole approach to communication.
Right. It's a game changer.
It is a game changer. I'm curious about meetings, though. Any tips from Bonnici about, like, meetings?
Yes, actually. So he talks about Mrs. Niles Perry, a principal in Los Angeles, who had this very specific way of running her cabinet meetings. Instead of having those potentially, heated discussions in the main meeting,
Oh, I see.
she'd hold pre-meetings
Ah.
with each department head to hash things out beforehand.
Oh, so smart.
Isn't it?
So they came to a consensus before the big meeting
Exactly.
that avoids those public disagreements,
Yeah. Oh,
and it presents a united front.
totally.
That's brilliant. I love it. Cabinet meetings then become more about presenting those unified decisions, less about airing all the dirty laundry.
Exactly.
It fosters unity, right,
Unity. Yeah.
among the leadership team. Okay, on to Bonici's next principle, which I think is so important but so hard to put into practice. Give the credit, take the blame.
Ah, yes. This one definitely goes against our natural instinct.
Oh, for sure.
Like we all want to take the credit when things go well, right?
Oh, yeah.
But it's tempting to pass the buck when they don't.
So tempting. But Bonici says true leaders, they do the opposite.
They do.
And I'm guessing he has some compelling examples, right, to illustrate this point.
He does. He does. One that stands out is about Mr. Chen, who implemented this new program to withhold transportation passes
Okay.
from students who hadn't returned their textbooks.
Ooh, I can only imagine. Logistically, that must have been a nightmare.
Oh, yeah. Total chaos.
Uh,
And the superintendent was not happy.
oh,
Called him furious, demanding an explanation. And, Mr. Chen could have easily blamed his staff
oh, for sure.
or said the program was flawed, but he didn't.
He took responsibility.
He took full responsibility, no excuses. And Bonnici says that's exactly what earned him respect,
Yeah.
and a chance to actually fix the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So taking ownership of your decisions,
Yeah,
even the ones that don't pan out, it builds that trust.
it does. That's a powerful lesson in accountability. Okay, but what else did Mr. Chen do that sort of exemplifies this principle?
Well, there's another story about a book shortage. And Mr. Chen, he was forced to give students outdated textbooks,
Oh,
just as a temporary solution.
yeah.
But instead of waiting for the criticism to roll in, he proactively informed the superintendent.
Oh, smart, right.
Get ahead of it.
Yeah, about the solution, the reasoning behind it. So he turned a potential negative into a positive,
He did.
or at least manageable.
Yes.
And the superintendent loved the idea. He even shared it with other principals.
Wow. And of course, Mr. Chen gave full credit to his assistant principal for coming up with the idea in the first place.
Of course.
So give the credit, take the blame.
Mm.
I'm sensing a theme here.
Definitely a pattern.
Bonici's really laying out this blueprint for, ethical and effective leadership.
Yeah.
And I'm betting his next principle builds on this idea of, empowering others. What do you think?
You're on the right track. His fifth principle is people are more important than paper. And it might seem obvious,
Yeah.
but it's so easy to get lost in that, administrative black hole,
Oh, tell me about it. When you're a school leader,
Mm-hmm.
paperwork can just take over your life.
Oh, it can. But how do you find that balance?
Right.
Bonnici must have some practical tips for, managing all that paperwork while still prioritizing, people.
He does. He actually shares Mr. Thielen's system for using a plan sheet to organize his day.
Okay.
It's about ensuring that he was dedicating time to both essential tasks
Oh, good.
and those, personal interactions.
So no fancy apps,
Right.
no software, just good old-fashioned planning.
Good old-fashioned planning.
Tell me more about this plan sheet.
Okay, so it's a simple but really effective tool.
Okay.
Mr. Thielen, he had columns, right,
Mm-hmm.
for period-specific tasks, like things that could be done anytime during the day,
Okay.
even evening events. It allowed him to block out time for those important things, like classroom observations,
Okay.
meetings, but also left space for, the inevitable, unexpected issues that always pop up in a school.
Right. The fire drills.
Oh, yeah. Angry parent phone calls, you name it.
He's building in that flexibility. So smart.
So smart.
So even back then, they understood the importance of prioritizing people over paperwork.
Absolutely.
And this feels even more relevant today
Oh,
when
yeah.
we're all just bombarded with distractions.
Like-
So by being organized, using technology effectively, Mr. Thielen was able to free up more time to actually focus on the people in his school. Okay, that leads perfectly into Bonici's next principle, which is let your people fly.
Love this one, all about delegation,
Delegation, okay.
empowerment.
Empowerment, right.
Bonici argues that great leaders, they don't micromanage.
Right.
They build strong teams, and they trust them to do their jobs.
That sounds great in theory, but handing over control, that can be scary.
It's a leap of faith.
It is a leap of faith, especially when you're ultimately responsible for everything that happens in that school.
It is. But Bonici, he shares this example of Mrs. Valletta delegating the approval of school rentals
Okay.
to her assistant principal.
Wow. That is a lot of trust.
It is. It is. But here's the thing.
Okay.
Something did go wrong.
Uh-oh.
The assistant principal mistakenly approved a rental for a religious ceremony, which was against district policy.
Oh, that's a big mistake.
Big mistake. Could have been a disaster.
Yeah.
But instead of, throwing her assistant principal under the bus,
Yeah.
Ms. Valletta took full responsibility. Remember, give the credit, take the blame.
She's walking the walk.
She is.
It's one thing to talk about accountability. It's another thing to actually live it.
Especially when the stakes are high.
Especially when the stakes are high.
And Bonnici argues that this is exactly what builds trust,
Yes.
loyalty within a team. When people know their leader has their back,
Yeah.
they're more willing to take risks, step up,
Yeah.
try new things.
Yeah, if you're constantly worried about getting blamed for every little mistake,
Oh, yeah.
you're not going to be innovative.
You're going to play it safe.
You're going to play it safe. Okay, makes sense. This principle extends beyond just delegating tasks, though, right?
It does.
It's about recognizing and respecting the expertise of your staff.
Yes.
And Bonici uses the example of Mr. Chen and his approach to teacher observations.
Oh, yes. Teacher observations.
Always sparks debate. Always sparks debate. So tell me, what was Mr. Chen's approach?
So Mr. Chen, drawing on his own experience as a teacher,
Yeah.
he recognized that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to teaching.
Right.
He saw value in different teaching methods.
Right.
Even those that weren't, the latest trend.
So instead of forcing teachers to conform to a particular style,
Right.
he trusted them
He trusted them.
to use the methods that worked best for them.
For them and their students.
And their students, exactly.
He understood that a teacher who's, comfortable and confident in their approach
Yeah.
is going to be far more effective
Right.
than one who's trying to squeeze himself into a mold that doesn't fit.
That's so important. It speaks to creating a school culture where teachers feel valued,
Valued,
respected
respected.
for their individual strengths and experience. This kind of connects to Bonici's next principle, be aware of workplace issues,
Yes.
which I imagine is all about getting into the nitty-gritty of what teachers face every single day.
You got it. He uses the example of scheduling conflicts, right?
Oh, yeah,
Student preferences when building the school schedule.
which can be a logistical nightmare.
Oh, total nightmare. Trying to make everyone happy with that master schedule.
It's like solving a Rubik's Cube blindfolded.
It really is.
It's impossible.
But Bonici highlights how Mr. Thielen used these things called program preference forms to gather input from teachers.
Okay, so that gives them a voice.
You give them a voice.
In the process.
In the process, it makes them feel valued, heard,
Absolutely.
and it probably helped him create a schedule that was more likely to work for everyone, or at least minimize the complaints.
At least minimize.
Right.
Because let's be real, you can't make everyone happy.
You can't please everyone.
But it's about finding that sweet spot where, like, the needs of the school and the needs of the teachers, they align.
They align.
Or at least coexist peacefully.
Or at least coexist peacefully.
So it's all about finding that balance.
It is.
Okay, I'm liking this theme. Finding that balance.
Yeah.
And that focus on collaboration and understanding different perspectives, it leads perfectly into his next principle. Seek advisement and input.
Yes. Acknowledging that you don't have all the answers.
Right.
And you need to actively seek out advice from different stakeholders.
Exactly. He shares the example of Mrs. Rivera, a suburban high school principal,
Yes.
who wanted to standardize grading practices across the school.
Ooh, that's a hot button issue.
Well, it's a hot one. I bet everyone had an opinion about that.
Everybody's got an opinion on grading. But instead of just dictating a new policy from her ivory tower,
Right, top down.
yeah, she brought the issue to the Academic Affairs Committee,
Oh, okay.
which included teachers, parents,
Wow.
even students.
Giving everyone a seat at the table.
Everyone a seat at the table.
That's true leadership.
That's how you get buy-in.
Yeah.
And she didn't just bring them in for a rubber stamp, right?
No, she actually wanted their feedback.
She wanted their feedback.
Yeah.
She facilitated discussions, provided drafts of the policy
Yeah.
based on their input.
Wow, that's a true collaborative process. What was the outcome?
So they were able to create this, really comprehensive policy
Oh, wow.
that addressed a lot of the common grading issues, like cumulative grading, makeup work,
Okay.
even alternative methods of assessment.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. And this whole idea of seeking advisement and input, it feels so relevant today when there's so much emphasis on transparency and stakeholder involvement in education.
It's essential.
Couldn't agree more. Bonici's next principle, I think, speaks to the heart of effective leadership. Maximize the positives, minimize the negatives.
Love this one. It's all about playing to people's strengths,
Right.
finding ways to work around their weaknesses.
Both in yourself
Yes.
and others.
In others, absolutely. And he talks about Mr. Thielen's approach to this teacher, Mr. Russ,
Okay.
who was a brilliant lecturer.
Okay.
But he really struggled with student interaction.
We all know that teacher type.
Right. Brilliant mind, but not so great at connecting with his students.
Not so good with the kids.
Yeah, not so good with the kids. But instead of trying to force him into a different mold,
Right.
Mr. Thielen recognized his strengths
Yeah.
and assigned him classes where his lecturing style would be most effective.
Oh, smart.
Right. Like AP courses, college prep,
Yeah.
where the students were, a little more self-directed,
It's about putting people in positions where they can shine.
where they can shine.
Play to those strengths. Minimize the weaknesses.
Exactly. Not everyone is good at everything,
Right.
and that's okay.
And that's okay.
The key is to find ways to utilize their talents in a way that benefits the whole school.
Yes, exactly. This reminds me of something we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Don't exacerbate, diffuse. It's like Mr. Thielen is taking that principle and applying it to his staff,
Makes sense.
instead of trying to force Mr. Russ to be something he's not.
Right.
He's finding a way to work with his personality and teaching style to create that positive outcome for everyone.
That's a great connection. It shows how these principles can work together to create, a more harmonious, effective school environment.
Yes, exactly. Bonici also shares this story about Miss Cerise, a teacher who excelled in computer technology.
Yes.
And her principal, Mr. Pfizer, he recognized that as a huge asset for the school.
This was back when computers were still pretty new in schools, too.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So Miss Cerise, she was a pioneer.
He was a pioneer.
And Mr. Pfizer gave her the freedom, the resources, to build the school's computer program from the ground up.
I love that. Seeing that potential and then nurturing it, even if it falls outside of that traditional teaching role.
Exactly. It's not just about, standing in front of a classroom.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to contribute.
Right. And Bonici argues that this approach, it not only benefits the school, it also boosts morale.
Oh, absolutely.
When people feel like their talents are valued and utilized,
Yeah.
they're more engaged.
They're more invested.
They're more invested in their work. It creates a ripple effect of positivity. It's amazing how these principles, when applied thoughtfully,
Right.
can transform a school's culture. Okay, ready for Bonici's final principle?
To be with it.
Remember what's important.
Oh, I love this one.
I have a feeling this goes way beyond, test scores
It does. It does.
and performance metrics.
Bonici reminds us that ultimately the most important thing is creating that school culture
Yeah.
where students and staff feel valued, respected, and supported.
It's about creating a community,
A community,
not just like a factory.
not a factory for churning out graduates.
Exactly.
He emphasizes the importance of rituals and traditions
Mhm.
in building that sense of community.
Okay, give me some examples.
So he talks about Mr. Thielen continuing a tradition started by his union representative,
Okay.
having staff greet students with holiday songs
Oh.
on the last day before winter break.
That's so sweet. What a simple but effective way to just create that warm, festive atmosphere.
Right. Those little touches.
The little touches.
And Bonici points out that, these small acts of kindness and celebration,
Yeah.
they go a long way in building a school culture where people feel connected.
Connected to each other.
Yeah.
To the school, it's about making school more than just a place where you go to learn. It's a place where you belong.
A place where you belong.
Exactly.
And he also talks about the importance of celebrating diversity. Finding ways to recognize,
Yeah.
honor the different cultural backgrounds of the students and staff
Oh, important.
in today's increasingly diverse world.
Especially today.
Absolutely. And Bonnici gives this example of Mr. Thielen, who created a system for rotating different cultural assemblies
Oh, no.
throughout the year
Yeah.
so that every group had a chance to share their traditions.
I love that. Promoting inclusivity.
Inclusivity.
Cultural understanding. It sounds like Bonici believes a school should be like a microcosm of the world we want to create, right?
Yes.
A place where everyone feels seen, heard, and celebrated.
That's the goal.
It's inspiring to hear about these leaders who are actually making that vision a reality.
It is. But it's not always easy.
No, of course not.
School leaders face some very specific, often challenging situations. And Bonnici doesn't shy away from that reality.
Right. Sometimes the job requires, like, navigating some really murky waters.
Murky waters is a good way to put it.
It is. And that brings us to another important aspect of leadership that Bonici explores, which is how to handle allegations of sexual misconduct.
Oof, yeah.
It's a tough topic, but it's something that every school leader needs to be prepared to address.
Every school leader, absolutely.
That's a heady responsibility.
It is.
I mean, schools have to walk this very fine line, right?
Right. They do. Between protecting students and respecting the rights of staff members.
Absolutely. And Bonici actually shares a story about Mr. Chen, who faced this exact dilemma when two students who had been caught cheating
Uh-oh.
and given detention accused the teacher of making inappropriate comments to them.
Oh, wow.
Seemed like a clear case of retaliation, right?
Yeah.
But this was around the time when there was this new regulation.
Right.
Stating that principals were supposed to report all allegations of sexual misconduct to the district office immediately. No questions asked. Immediately. So Mr. Chen, he had this really difficult choice to make.
Yeah, a tough spot.
Does he follow the letter of the law?
Right.
Or trust his judgment and investigate the situation himself?
Oh, that's a tough one.
So what did he do? He chose to investigate.
He investigated, okay.
Yeah, he knew the students, he knew the teacher, and he felt pretty confident that the allegations were retaliatory.
Okay.
And didn't warrant involving the district. I can see his reasoning, but I'm guessing it backfired.
It did, unfortunately.
Uh-oh.
The students' parents went straight to the district.
Oh, no.
Investigators were sent to the school, and Mr. Chen ended up in hot water for not following protocol.
That's a hard lesson to learn.
It is.
That sometimes, even when you think you're doing what's best for everyone involved,
Right.
it's important to follow the established procedures.
Sometimes those rules are there for a reason.
Yeah.
And Bonici uses this example to illustrate how important it is to understand the larger context surrounding regulations, even when they might seem to contradict your instincts or your personal judgment.
Your judgment. So sometimes the best course of action is to follow the rules.
It is.
Even when they feel, I don't know, overly cautious or bureaucratic.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good reminder that being a leader isn't always about doing what feels right in the moment, but about considering those potential long-term consequences.
Thinking about the long game.
Thinking about the long game, exactly.
Now, Bonici also shares another story about Mr. Chen.
Okay.
Dealing with a different type of allegation. This time, a young male teacher was accused of having inappropriate contact
Okay.
with a female student.
Okay, this is more serious.
More serious. And this one unfolded in a rather unusual way.
Okay.
The accusation wasn't made directly to the teacher or to Mr. Chen.
Okay.
Another student in the class wrote a letter
Whoa.
to a friend
Okay.
detailing the alleged incident. And that letter somehow made its way to Mr. Chen.
Wow, that's a strange turn of events. So what did the letter say?
So here's where it gets really interesting. The letter was incredibly detailed.
Okay.
It even included information that the accused teacher could never have known, even if the allegations were true.
So it was pretty obvious that it was made up.
It was fabricated.
Fabricated.
And in this case, Mr. Chen was able to use the letter itself to debunk the allegation
Oh, wow.
and clear the teacher's name.
It's like a detective novel or something.
It is. It is. It highlights how complex these situations can be.
Right. It's not always black and white.
Not always black and white.
You can't always just assume.
And Bonici uses these contrasting stories to really emphasize the complexities
Yeah.
involved in handling these allegations of sexual misconduct. There's no easy answer. Every situation requires careful consideration,
Right.
judgment, sensitivity to all parties involved.
It's a good reminder that school leadership, it's not just about enforcing rules. It's about navigating these really nuanced and sensitive situations with empathy, with wisdom, and with commitment to fairness.
And sometimes it's knowing when to seek guidance and support from others.
Speaking of guidance, Bonici's next principle is control the communication, which I imagine is all about being proactive and shaping the narrative of this school.
Exactly. It's about being more than just, sending out memos and making announcements.
Yeah, it's about being strategic.
Strategic.
Proactive with communication.
I know it's reactive.
Not just putting out fires.
Exactly. And he emphasizes the importance of things like weekly bulletins, parent newsletters.
The cornerstones of school communication. But he's not just talking about listing events and announcements.
Well, he encourages school leaders to use these tools to really reinforce school policies,
Yeah.
celebrate staff achievements, and foster that shared sense of purpose.
Community.
And community, transforming those routine communications into these powerful tools.
So it's about being intentional with every message.
Every message.
Using those regular communication channels to really reinforce the school's values and vision.
Right.
Okay, what other examples does he give?
So he shares Mr. Thielen's strategy of creating this comprehensive teacher handbook.
Okay.
And it went beyond, just a list of rules
Oh, okay.
and regulations.
Yeah.
Mr. Thielen saw this as an opportunity to lay out his vision
Oh.
for the school, to explain the why behind the what.
I love that. When teachers understand the reasoning
The reasoning.
behind the rules, they're much more likely to buy in,
More likely to follow them.
to follow them willingly.
And it saves so much time.
Oh, yeah. And frustration down the road.
Frustration. If it's all clearly laid out in the handbook,
Yeah.
you don't have to answer those same questions over and over again.
Oh, that's a win-win.
Win-win for everyone. And Bonnici, he also stresses the importance of consistency
Okay.
in communication.
Okay, yeah.
He says that when a school leader's actions align with their words,
Right.
it builds that trust,
Yeah.
credibility,
It's walking the walk.
walking the walk.
Not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And he shares this story about how Mr. Thielen, after experiencing this pretty chaotic prom
Oh, no.
as a principal,
Yeah.
he sent out this very detailed memo to staff outlining very specific expectations for chaperones.
Oh, I bet the next prom was a much smoother affair.
It was much smoother.
Yeah.
And Bonici points out that clear communication, it isn't just about preventing problems, It's also about setting everyone up for success.
It's about creating that shared understanding.
Shared understanding.
Of expectation.
Expectations,
About-
goals, and ultimately it leads to that, more positive and productive school environment.
Controlled communication is really about shaping the culture of the school.
Shaping the culture.
Yes. And that brings us to Bonici's final principle, which focuses on a group that's often overlooked in discussions of school. Welcome back. We are wrapping up our deep dive into Charles A. Bonici's Creating a Successful Leadership Style. I'm already feeling like I've gained a whole new perspective on what it even means to be a leader.
It's been quite the journey
It has.
through all the ups and downs of school leadership.
It has. And we've seen how these seemingly simple principles, when put into practice, they can have such a profound impact on a school's culture, right?
They really can.
We've covered so much. We've talked about setting a good example, diffusing those tense situations, mastering communication, recognizing those often unsung heroes of the support staff.
Yeah.
But now I'm curious, how does all this connect to the bigger picture of education, right?
Right.
What's the ultimate goal of effective leadership in schools? What are we really striving for here?
That's a great question. And Bonici, he addresses this head on.
Okay.
He argues that effective leadership, it's ultimately about creating an environment where every student has the opportunity to thrive.
Okay. Yeah.
It's about fostering that culture of learning,
Right.
growth, mutual respect,
Mm-hmm.
not just churning out test scores.
Right. It's about moving beyond the mechanics of managing a school and leading it towards that shared vision, right?
Exactly.
Inspiring people, not just directing them.
Beautifully said.
Oh, thank you.
And Bonici, he constantly reminds us that the decisions we make as school leaders, they really do have a profound impact
They do.
on the lives of our students. We have a responsibility to make those decisions wisely,
Yes.
with empathy,
Yeah.
with a deep understanding of the needs of our community.
That's a lot of pressure.
It's not a job for the faint of heart.
No, it's not. But I imagine it's also incredibly rewarding, right?
Oh, absolutely.
to see those students flourish.
Yeah.
And to know that you played a part in their success, that must be an amazing feeling.
It's the best feeling.
Yeah.
Bonici's book is full of these inspiring stories about school leaders who faced incredible challenges. We're talking
Yeah.
budget cuts, bureaucratic red tape,
Oh, yeah.
student apathy,
Right.
staff burnout, you name it, it's in there.
Real world struggles
Real world.
that every school leader can relate to.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But these leaders found ways to persevere,
Yeah.
to innovate,
Yeah.
ultimately to make a positive difference in the lives of their students.
They did.
They didn't let those challenges defeat them.
That's what true leadership is all about, right?
It is.
It's not about having all the answers. It's about having the courage to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
Seek out that advice and empower others
Empower others.
to be a part of that solution.
Be a part of it.
It's about leading with both your head and your heart.
Head and heart.
And that's a message that resonates far beyond the walls of a school, I think.
It does.
Bonici's book, it's valuable for anyone in a leadership position, regardless of their field, really.
Absolutely.
But whether you're leading a team at work, a community organization, or even just your own family, these principles can help you, right?
They can.
To navigate those complexities of human relationships.
It's all about people.
It is. And to inspire those around you.
It's about tapping into those, like, universal human qualities.
Yeah.
You know, empathy, integrity,
Yeah.
courage, resilience that make a true leader.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious, what has resonated most with you?
What has stood out?
What leadership qualities do you already see in yourself? And what areas do you want to develop further?
What steps can you take today to become a more effective leader,
Yeah.
more compassionate leader in your own life, in your own sphere of influence?
It's a great question.
How can you make a positive difference?
Yeah, how can you make a positive difference in the lives of those around you? Be sure to check out the show notes
For sure.
for a link to Bonici's book and some other great resources on leadership.
We've got you covered.
Keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.